Be me, head of enterprise security for OmniCorp Solutions, a sprawling legacy infrastructure with thousands of endpoints and enough internal politics to make your teeth ache. My job. Keep the bad guys out, keep the good guys in line. Mostly keep the bad guys out. Be not me, Chadwick, CEO of Vanguard Tech Partners, a boutique consulting firm specializing in next-gen cloud transformation. A man who learned everything he knows about it from LinkedIn thought leaders and expensive, glossy brochures. He wears suits that cost more than my first car and smells faintly of unearned confidence. Chadwick was brought in by upper management, specifically by a VP who thought disruption meant doing things faster, no matter the cost. His mission: migrate OmniCorp's sensitive customer data from our hardened on-premise data warehouse to their proprietary Polaris Data Vault cloud solution. My immediate red flag list went supernova. From day one, Chadwick was a walking policy violation. He strolled into our secure operations center like he owned the place. He didn't bother with visitor badges or sign-in sheets. He just assumed his presence was permission. First interaction, he demanded full, unrestricted admin credentials to our production Active Directory environment. For faster integration, he declared, leaning back in his chair, feet up on a table that cost more than his entire consulting firm. We need to streamline identity synchronization. I explained our least privilege policy. I outlined the mandatory multi-factor authentication for all administrative accounts. I detailed the audit trail requirements, the separation of duties, the fact that a third-party vendor, especially one responsible for a data migration, absolutely could not have direct domain admin access. He just waved a dismissive hand. "This is why you guys are so slow," he sighed, looking at my team with pity. "Old ways of thinking, we need agility, I need a user account, domain admin." Now, I calmly told him it wasn't possible. Not without executive approval, a full security review, a signed waiver of liability from Vanguard, and a formal change request that would take weeks to process. He scoffed, "Fine, we'll find another way." I logged the interaction, every word, every refusal, every arrogant dismissal. Second interaction, a week later, Chadwick brought in a flash drive, not just any flash drive. A generic, unlabeled USB stick, radiating, found in a parking lot, energy. He insisted on plugging it directly into a development server. "It has our proprietary Velocity Sync script," he explained. "It optimizes data transfer. Can't run it from the network drive, too many hoops." I informed him of our strict no unvetted external media policy. Every piece of software, every script, every file had to go through a rigorous internal security scan. No exceptions, especially not on a server that, even if development, still touched our network and eventually synced to production. He rolled his eyes. "It's just a PowerShell script, perfectly safe. It's how we achieve our industry-leading speeds." He pulled a crumpled printout from his briefcase. It was a single page, half filled with what looked like poorly formatted PowerShell. It had a header that said Velocity Sync Vone. No version control, no comments. It looked like something a high schooler wrote. I reiterated the policy. He muttered about bureaucracy and stifling innovation. He stormed out, taking his magic USB stick with him. I documented the refusal, the policy citation, his reaction. I even made a note of the specific USB drive, a generic black plastic type. Third interaction, a physical security breach. I got an alert from our server room motion sensor. At 2 a.m., I reviewed the camera footage. There was Chadwick, in a tracksuit, attempting to jimmy open the server room door with what looked like a credit card. He didn't have authorized after-hours access. He had clearly tried to sneak in. Our physical security is no joke. Biometric scanners, two-factor authentication for the keypad, reinforced steel doors. He looked ridiculous, fumbling with the card. Eventually, a janitor walked by and, seeing Chadwick, assumed he was an authorized late-night worker. The janitor used their master keycard to let him in. Chadwick gave a triumphant nod and entered. I was on the phone within minutes, pulling up live footage. He spent 10 minutes wandering around, looking confused, touching random server racks. He didn't plug anything in, just looked lost. Then he left. I immediately filed a formal security incident report. This wasn't just a policy violation, it was a brazen attempt to circumvent physical safeguards. The next morning, I confronted him. He feigned ignorance. Oh, just checking on the hardware. Needed to see the setup for optimal planning. You know, hands-on leadership. He smiled, completely unrepentant. I issued a formal verbal warning, documented for his employee file, with copies sent to his HR department and ours. I made it clear any further unauthorized access attempts would result in his immediate removal from the premises. He just chuckled, "Relax, just trying to help." I documented his complete lack of concern. Every email, every interaction, every dismissed warning went into a dedicated, encrypted folder. My Chadwick folder, it was growing fat. Then came the breaking point. It was a Tuesday. I was in a quarterly review meeting. My phone buzzed. Critical alert. Unauthorized USB device detected on a production domain controller. My blood ran cold. I ran out of the meeting, my mind racing. Who? How? The server room access logs showed no anomalies since Chadwick's late-night visit, but my internal network monitoring system had flagged it. A generic black plastic USB drive, the same one. I checked the security camera footage for the relevant server rack. There he was, Chadwick. He had somehow convinced a junior system administrator, a new hire fresh out of college, eager to please, to grant him temporary physical access to a server cabinet under the guise of urgent configuration verification. The junior admin, completely unaware of the prior warnings, had signed him in. Chadwick, with a triumphant smirk, then bypassed the specific server where he was authorized. He moved 2 racks over to the primary domain controller that managed all service accounts for our cloud integrations, including the Polaris Data Vault. He plugged in his generic black USB drive. He was in there for less than 5 minutes. I watched him on the screen, a smug look on his face. He typed furiously, then unplugged the drive and handed it back to the junior admin. He clapped the young man on the shoulder and walked away. By the time I reached the server room, he was gone. The junior admin was still there, looking slightly uneasy. Mr. Chadwick said he needed to run a quick diagnostic script, he stammered. He said it was critical for the Polaris migration. I checked the domain controller. Within minutes, multiple security alerts were firing, new service account creation, altered permissions. And most damning, a critical change to the Polaris Data Vault integration script. Multi-factor authentication had been forcibly disabled for the primary service account. The script Chadwick ran had directly manipulated the authentication policies. I confronted Chadwick immediately. "What did you do?" I demanded, showing him the logs. He looked at the screen, feigning confusion. "Diagnostic. Just optimizing the connection. Polaris was giving us issues, needed to bypass some of the old, slow security protocols to get it flowing." He looked at me, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. "You know, the ones your team insisted on." He tried to pin it on me. "OmniCorp's security policies are antiquated. They're hindering progress. I merely streamlined the process. If anything goes wrong, it's because your systems are too rigid." He even had the audacity to suggest that my overly complex security setup was the problem. He spun a tale about how my resistance to his solutions was causing the delays, and he had to take decisive action. That was the moment I stopped arguing. I went into read-only mode. I nodded, I made non-committal sounds, I let him pontificate, but internally a switch had flipped. My patience, which was legendary, had run out. It was time for the master plan to move from passive documentation to active weaponization. I spent the next 2 weeks in a silent fury of meticulous preparation. Every single interaction with Chadwick, every email, every verbal warning, every policy citation, every screenshot of his policy violations was cross-referenced. I reviewed OmniCorp's vendor contracts. Specifically, Clause 7, subsection D, vendor shall adhere to all OmniCorp security policies, procedures, and directives. Any deviation must be approved in writing by OmniCorp's Chief Information Security Officer or their designated representative. Chadwick had no such approval. I pulled up our employee handbook section on acceptable use of company resources. It clearly stated that only approved and scanned external media could be connected to company systems. Chadwick had violated that. I had the log of the USB insertion, the camera footage, the junior admin's confession. I reviewed our internal IT policy, change management protocol. Any change to production systems required a formal change request, impact assessment, and approval from at least 2 senior IT managers. Chadwick had bypassed this entirely. He forced a junior admin to grant access, then made critical configuration changes. I had the audit logs of the change, the specific script he ran. I had managed to extract a copy from the server's temporary files, and the time-stamped evidence. I built a timeline, painstakingly linking each of Chadwick's actions to specific policy violations, contractual breaches, and security incidents. Every piece of evidence was time-stamped, digitally signed, and stored in multiple secure locations. I imagined it as a perfectly crafted trap, one that Chadwick had gleefully walked into, laying out the bait himself. I even pulled the security footage of him attempting to jimmy the server room door with a credit card, proving his prior intent to bypass security. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for the inevitable. The Polaris data vault, with its MFA-disabled service account, was a ticking time bomb. The detonation happened exactly 3 weeks later. It hit like a freight train. News alerts started flashing across every screen in our security operations center. Massive data breach impacts Omnicorp customers, sensitive information exposed in cloud migration disaster. The headlines screamed. Our Polaris data vault, the crown jewel of Chadwick's next-gen cloud transformation, had been compromised. Millions of customer records, PII personally identifiable information, including names, addresses, and partially obscured payment details, were now being hawked on underground forums. The specific vulnerability, the disabled MFA on the service account, exactly as Chadwick's Velocity Sync script had configured it. The emergency board meeting was a spectacle. The CEO, COO, legal team, and our board members were all present, faces grim. Chadwick sat at the head of the table, somehow still radiating arrogance, attempting to control the narrative. "This is clearly a failure of Omnicorp's outdated infrastructure," he declared, puffing out his chest. "We warned you these legacy systems were a risk. Our Polaris solution is secure, but the integration with your antiquated Active Directory created a weak link. We advised modernizing, but your team dragged their feet." He gestured vaguely in my direction. "My team worked tirelessly to mitigate your internal issues, even going as far as to temporarily disable certain overzealous security features for compatibility, but the underlying flaw remained." His eyes met mine. He expected me to be crushed, to wither under the accusation. Instead, I just looked back, calm as a glacier. "Mr. Chadwick," the CEO interjected, his voice dangerously low, "we need specifics. What exactly happened?" "A sophisticated credentials stuffing attack," Chadwick rattled off, "targeting an Omnicorp legacy account that your security team failed to protect. Our Polaris platform itself remains uncompromised. The breach occurred at the integration layer on your side." I raised a hand. "With respect, Mr. Chadwick, that's not entirely accurate." He glared at me. "And what makes you say that, head of security? Were you even aware of the risks we highlighted?" "I was," I replied, my voice steady, "and I have the documentation to prove it." I opened my laptop, connected it to the large conference room screen. "On date X," I began, "Mr. Chadwick demanded direct domain admin access to our production Active Directory. I explicitly denied this request, citing multiple policy violations and security risks." I displayed the email chain, his initial demand, my detailed refusal, and his dismissive response. "On date Y," I continued, "Mr. Chadwick attempted to introduce unvetted, external media, a USB drive, onto our development servers. I again denied this, citing our external media policy and the requirement for security scans." I showed the internal report, the camera footage. Chadwick started to squirm. "Those were minor procedural disagreements," he blustered, Irrelevant to the breach. Irrelevant, I paused for dramatic effect. On date Z, Mr. Chadwick bypassed all security protocols, coerced a junior system administrator into granting him unauthorized access to a production domain controller, and directly inserted the very same unvetted USB drive. The security camera footage played on the big screen, showing Chadwick's smug face as he plugged in the drive. He then ran a proprietary script, I explained, which, according to the system audit logs, forcibly disabled multi-factor authentication for the primary Polaris Data Vault service account. This action directly created the vulnerability exploited in the current breach. I displayed the audit logs, the specific script lines that altered the MFA settings. Furthermore, I continued, projecting an incident report. On date A, Mr. Chadwick illegally attempted to gain physical access to our server room after hours. This pattern of behavior demonstrates a consistent disregard for Omni Corp's security posture and a clear intent to circumvent established safeguards. The footage of him trying to jimmy the door with a credit card, followed by the janitor letting him in, played in stark silence. The room was silent. Chadwick's face had gone from arrogant to ashen. The CEO leaned forward, his eyes burning into Chadwick. "Is this true, Mr. Chadwick?" Chadwick stammered. I was just optimizing. These policies are arcane. The script was for efficiency. It's not my fault if your systems aren't robust enough to handle modern solutions. Your contract, Mr. Chadwick, the CEO interjected, his voice ice cold. Clause 7, subsection D, clearly states adherence to all Omni Corp security policies. You signed it, you broke it. He turned to the General Counsel. Terminate Vanguard Tech Partners contract immediately. Escort Mr. Chadwick and his team off the premises. Effective now. The General Counsel nodded, already dialing. Within minutes, security personnel were at the door. Chadwick, his face red with fury and humiliation, tried to protest, but his words were cut short. He was led out of the room, his expensive suit suddenly looking cheap and ill-fitting. The silence that followed was deafening. Update, Week 1. Vanguard Tech Partners went from next-gen cloud transformers to currently being investigated by the Department of Justice in record time. The immediate termination of their contract, combined with Omni Corp's, and soon, several other companies, lawsuits for gross negligence and data breach liability, completely evaporated their balance sheet. Their proprietary Polaris Data Vault solution, which it turned out was just a rebranded, poorly secured open-source solution, was revealed to be a security nightmare. Update, Month 1, Chadwick lost everything. His firm dissolved. His personal assets, including his ridiculous sports car and his McMansion, were seized to cover initial legal fees and damages. The regulatory fines alone were staggering. His wife filed for divorce, citing financial ruin and willful disregard for common sense. Rumor has it he's being considered for charges of criminal negligence. Karma, it seems, has excellent data retention policies. Update 6 months. Omni Corp weathered the storm. My meticulously compiled evidence, along with my proactive incident response, saved the company from even worse reputational damage. My department received a massive budget increase, and I received a significant promotion and bonus. Chadwick, I heard he's taken up a new career, flipping burgers at a fast food joint. Apparently, he's still complaining about the archaic grill settings and trying to optimize the patty flipping process with his own proprietary techniques. Some things never change.